Good evening everyone, I'm Chris, and welcome back to Anox Talks. Another year has gone by, meaning another year of playing many games. So, it's time for my yearly video game review. This year I will be making a slight change to the format of this series. Instead of starting with 2023 and going back to older games, this year I will be going in chronological order for everything that I talk about, meaning that 2023 games will be discussed last. As always, I will try to stay away from major plot spoilers for the games I talk about, and will for the most part only provide plot information that is either introductory or unsurprising. Also, when I recorded the first take of this, my pet bird was being very loud. In some sections I was unable to remove this noise, so I opted to re-record those lines. So, if you see any choppy editing where my hair randomly changes length, you'll know that's why. So, let's get started. The oldest game that I played in 2023 was from 2012. And that game was Dishonored, which released on October 9th of 2012. Dishonored is a first-person stealth action game where you play as Corvo, royal bodyguard of the Empress. The game takes place primarily in Dunwall, a plague-ridden imperial capital. In the opening moments of the game, the Empress is assassinated and Corvo is framed for the crime and imprisoned. Many months later, a group of loyalists provide Corvo with a means of escaping captivity and grant him the opportunity to get revenge on the Empress's true killers.
We've got big plans, but we can't do any of it without you.
After this point, the game is a series of missions where you are tasked with taking down targets, freeing allies,
Thank you, Corvo.
and gathering information.
Her name is Lydia.
Throughout the course of the game, you also gain access to supernatural abilities from a being known as the Outsider.
There are forces in the world and beyond the world. Great forces that men call magic. And now, these forces will serve your will.
What makes the game so interesting is the many different approaches you are presented with when dealing with each mission. First, do you want to sneak up on your target or do you want to confront them head on? That choice will go alongside with the choices you make when navigating the level, such as choosing between barging through the front door or teleporting into a third floor window. You can also choose how you want to deal with enemies you encounter along the way. Do you choke them to sleep or throw a grenade at them? Grab it. Finally, you can choose how to deal with your target. Usually, each main target will have one non-lethal method to deal with them, in addition to the various lethal methods. Sure, you could broadcast your target's crimes to the entire city, but a good stab to the back works just as well. When it comes to using lethal versus non-lethal methods, the game world will actually change based on which one of those you choose. If you kill a certain percentage of people, which includes guards, civilians, and main targets, then the plague affecting the city will worsen due to the amount of dead bodies increasing. This drives the city into higher chaos, which increases the number of enemies that will be encountered in each mission, and will ultimately make the ending you get much darker. I first played Dishonored in 2016, and since that first playthrough it has been one of my favorite games of all time. I love the attention that was paid to fleshing out the game's world, and that's with me only having skimmed over most of the acquirable lore notes scattered throughout missions. The game does a good job of not leaning too heavily on those notes, allowing you to eavesdrop on conversations that make the world feel robust. Real thought seems to have been put into coming up with the interesting technologies the world uses, the religions its inhabitants follow, and the motivations of major characters. This game really shines in its level design, with each level feeling unique enough to not get repetitive as you progress through the game. After finally doing my first low chaos run in 2023, and subsequently 100%ing the game, I can fully recommend this game as a must play. I played a few releases from 2013, with the first of those being a DLC for Dishonored. Dishonored, The Knife of Dunwall was released on April 16th, 2013, and is the game's first story DLC. In it, you play as Dowd, the assassin truly responsible for the Empress's assassination. Around the same time Corvo escapes from prison, a racked with guilt Dowd receives a name from the outsider that could lead to his redemption.
Delilah.
The DLC then plays out similarly to the base game, where you are given targets you must deal with in exchange for information. Again, The Knife of Dunwall gives you many options when approaching missions, and multiple endings based on the approach you take. It also gives a slightly modified set of supernatural abilities to use. For instance, Dowd's teleport ability freezes time while using it to pick a destination, unlike Corvo's, which allows time to keep moving. The DLC feels fresh thanks to the new abilities, and it allows you to spend more time in the world of Dishonored with more well-crafted levels. Also from 2013, I played Papers, Please, which released on August 8th. In Papers, Please, you play as an immigration inspector working at a border checkpoint for the great and glorious country of Arstotzka. Gameplay consists of verifying the validity of many different documents that people crossing the border possess. The game takes place over 31 days, during which the rules for validating documents will change constantly. You'll also encounter some unique characters as you play that will make enticing offers for you to distribute papers, overlook document discrepancies, or join a secret organization. Over the course of the 31 days, the choices you make will eventually grant you one of 20 endings. I think that Papers, Please does a good job of progressively stacking mechanics on top of each other as the game progresses. It also isn't overly brutal if you just make a few mistakes. So far I've only unlocked 2 of the 20 possible endings, though one of those was an accident. The one that I did aim for was an ending in which you dutifully perform your tasks and ignore recruitment attempts by the secret organization. This is technically a good ending for you and your family, but maybe not so much for your fellow citizens. Papers, Please makes the monotony of dealing with paperwork fun, and with the multiple endings offers a decent amount of replayability. Finally, from 2013, I played Dishonored's second story DLC. That is Dishonored: The Brigmore Witches, which released on August 13th. Dishonored's second story DLC once again focuses on Dowd continuing his mission to figure out why the outsider told him the name Delilah. I don't have much to add here that I didn't say about the Knife of Dunwall without getting into plot spoilers. The Brigmore Witches DLC does allow you to carry your progress forward from the Knife of Dunwall, allowing you to keep supernatural ability upgrades, gear upgrades, money, and chaos level. I didn't play anything from 2014, so we're skipping straight to 2015. Next, from 2015, I played Hatred, which released on June 1st. Hatred is a highly controversial isometric third-person shooter where you play as a sociopathic, misanthropic, genocidal man whose name is not important.
My name is not important. What is important is what I'm going to do.
The game provides you with objectives related to killing people and causing destruction. Targets can be civilians, law enforcement, gang members, and military. No one is spared. Various weapons are provided to carry out this task. These weapons are shotguns, pistols, SMGs, rifles, flamethrowers, and different types of grenades. You are also able to get up close with a kick attack to knock enemies to the ground. Once enemies are on the ground due to either you kicking them or being grievously injured by your bullets, you are able to execute them with brief but visceral animations. The game became infamous after being removed from Steam, before being re-added with an apology from Valve president Gabe Newell. From a gameplay perspective, Hatred does not seem extremely groundbreaking. If the player model had instead been some sort of soldier while all enemy models were other soldiers, I doubt as many people would have given it a second thought. What I can extract from this is that it's not the gameplay that is the issue for detractors, but rather the game design choice to have the majority of enemy target models appear to be innocent civilians, and the framing of the player character as an evil person. There is and has been a push from members of the public that video games can influence people in ways so extreme that they will imitate what they see in them in real life. And sure, perhaps there is an argument to be made that media will desensitize people to the things contained within them due to frequent consequence-free exposure to those things. However, I believe it requires some additional factors in life to have a person go on to perform heinous actions in real life than just a video game. From a completionist perspective, the game is not fun. Some achievements require completing the game on the hardest difficulty. Successful completion of this difficulty requires playing the game outside of how a normal person would play, with strategies such as shooting wildly off screen to kill enemies before they see you, and before you would realistically see them. Other achievements require playing the survival mode for the game, which places you in a map where you must survive waves of enemies. One of the achievements for survival requires you to reach a certain rank, and you rank up using score. Unfortunately, killing enemies gives very low score, so the only way to get this done quickly is to get a high kill combo. However, your combo gets completely reset to 0 if you get hit even once, so your best bet is sitting on a specific map in a spot where enemies inexplicably can't hit you 99% of the time. Of course, just sitting in this spot means you have to wait for enemies to cross the map and file into the room one at a time. Finally, the game also has one of my least favorite types of achievements: playtime achievements. These are terrible, since a lot of the time they will result in an artificially inflated game time. When I completed the last non-playtime achievement, I still had about 10 hours of the 50-hour achievement left to do. Unfortunately, the game doesn't count time spent in the main menu or pause menus, which I didn't find out until too late. Luckily, it's possible to progress the achievement while AFK inside the tutorial area, which has no enemies that spawn to kill you. So I got the 50-hour achievement at what Steam had tracked as my 62.5th hour. The thing that drew me to this game, aside from the controversy, was the destructible environments. In the game, you are able to break certain objects, blow holes in walls and floors, and set things on fire. This mechanic can be interesting at times, but also can be pretty annoying when enemies utilize it to shoot you through tiny holes. In short, this game wasn't worth the public outrage, and it wasn't worth my money. The final game from 2015 that I played was Kingdom Classic, which released on October 21st. Kingdom Classic is the first game in the Kingdom series that is available on Steam. In all of the Kingdom games, you play as the ruler of a kingdom in a pixel art style side-scroller. You utilize coins to hire subjects, supply them with tools, and undertake construction projects. You then reinvest these coins in expanding your kingdom and bolstering your forces. All of this is in service of defeating the Greed, a faction of monsters determined to take your coins and ultimately your crown. Of the Kingdom games available on Steam, Kingdom Classic is this formula at its simplest. In Classic, you have a town center at the center of the map, with 2 greed portals on each side of it. The game ends after you destroy all 4 portals. I love this game. The loop of growing your kingdom and growing your wealth to create a well-defended and massively wealthy kingdom is a fun one. There are some issues I have with some choices that were made when designing achievements. In February, I put up recordings of me earning the last achievements that I was missing, which were the achievements for surviving up to 100 days. The game gets quite laggy at the tail end of doing that achievement, and eventually you reach a point where you can basically AFK the rest of the time. This is because it doesn't seem the enemies are able to do much after you reach a certain number of archers. These facts cause the achievement to be more tedious to acquire than difficult. I believe they do change this in the follow-up game, Kingdom New Lands, by making it harder to get money as you progress in days, which makes it harder to snowball into having so many archers, making surviving that long more of a challenge. The game is nice to look at with its very pleasing pixel art style, and the accompanying music is great at setting the mood. The game was made free in late 2020, so you can try this game for no cost other than time, and if you enjoy it, then you can spend money to get the other entries which add more complexity. Next up we have 2016, which only has one game that I played from it. That game is BalanCity, which released on September 21st. BalanCity is a game about balancing buildings on top of a platform to create a city. Just like other city building games, and, real life, different buildings perform different functions such as providing power, housing, or jobs. To get the most out of your housing and workplace locations, you can place them in a 2x2 configuration to create a large building. Then, by stacking 3 large buildings on top of each other, you can create a skyscraper. The game limits the maximum height you can build to until you reach a certain population threshold. Then, to actually increase your maximum height, you must place a special structure, which more often than not will be some wacky shape that doesn't mesh well with the rest of your balanced city. Occasionally, you'll face disasters that can be combated with certain buildings, such as fire stations to put out fires, or a military headquarters to fight back a giant monster. There are 3 modes in the game which all provide different ways of playing. First are the missions, which provide a tutorial on how the game works, and then some challenges to put that training into action. Then there are the scenarios, which are styled after real-world locations and will have their special buildings based on real-world landmarks. The scenarios are where properly balancing the special buildings becomes pivotal in building a successful city, since the real-world landmarks are even crazier than the default special buildings. Finally, a free build mode is provided in which you can customize settings like gravity and the platform size to facilitate building your dream city. This game has an interesting concept, but in practice is infuriatingly difficult. If you only saw what I recorded for Anox Longs, this probably does not come across. For Anox Longs, I only recorded the missions portion of the game. To 100% the game, I also had to go into the scenarios and the free build mode. The scenarios mode with its odd-shaped landmarks was difficult for sure, but nothing compares to some of the free build achievements, which I highly suspect were created without any consideration of the game's mechanics. These are the height achievements. There are 3 of them: 500 meters, 1,000 meters, and 2,000 meters. I will just be focusing on the 2,000 meters one, since if you complete it, you obviously complete the other 2. So, let me hop into the game and show you what you need to do to get this achievement. So first off, you cannot have any gravity modifications set. It has to be on normal. I believe you are allowed to turn disasters off, and you can change the size of your platform to a larger one like thick or I believe Manhattan. So first, let me show you exactly what counts in the maximum height consideration. So right up here, you'll see that the max height currently is 0 meters. If I place down a power plant, you'll see that max height does not go up. That is because the only thing that counts for the max height are the apartments, the housing of the game. Now you'll see I have a bunch of apartments placed down now, and our max height still has not gone up. That is because the housing also needs to be valid, which means that it needs to have a grounded power source nearby, which we're fulfilling here with this power plant, but could also be fulfilled by a windmill or one of these solar things. But also to be valid, they need nearby jobs. So place down a couple workplaces. There we go. These houses are now valid. Our max height is 28 meters now. I believe that is because these houses each are about 10 meters tall. So if I fit one more right here, it should go up to 38 meters. And that extra 8 meters is sort of intersected with the ground here, since this platform is a little taller than normal. I believe if you did it on the normal size platform, it would just be a 1 meter difference, which is barely noticeable. So now you may notice that we are getting a little cramped under this limit line, and that's because we have to place down our star building So we place it down, a limit goes up. So before the height limit will go above 2,000 meters, which we need for the achievement, you have to build all of the star buildings. These each require reaching a population at increments of 250, with the last one being a spaceship launch pad that is unlocked at 1,500 population. So you have to be good enough at the game to build up a decent base city all the way up to that population requirement. So once you place down all of your star buildings and have your height limit above 2,000 meters, then the best strategy that I found, using this guide by Steam user Ralcor, is to stack these tall elevators all the way up to the required height, and then place your required 3 things on top of it. So you would just very carefully stack these on top of each other. It's easier to keep them in line if you just use the arrow keys to go up and down. So place, 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 place. So you can see that they're getting slightly misaligned even with that strategy. And eventually, once you get to a certain height, that will start causing swaying in the elevators. That swaying will prevent you from reliably stacking them in a straight line, and eventually the swaying will get so bad that one of the elevator pieces will just kick out and bring everything above it tumbling down, and potentially knocking whatever is under it down if you are not fast enough at deleting the things as they're falling. Those falling elevators pose a serious hazard to your platform, which makes it super important that you build a good base city that will not easily unbalance your platform if something falls on top of it. Something else you need to be aware of is that if any of your star buildings fall off your platform for any reason, like if I just place it off the side there, then you will not be able to build anything else unless you replace that star building, which is very important since if your platform is tipping, you are able to counterplace buildings to rebalance it. And if not having a star building is preventing you from being able to do that, then you can easily lose to a precarious situation that otherwise would have been recoverable. The worst part about all this is the game can just freeze. Multiple times I had this happen to me where the game just stops. The music keeps going, but the camera gets stuck in place, physics stop physicking, and nothing can be placed. This is especially infuriating due to the game not having a real save mechanic, even though the button does say save and exit. The button doesn't seem to function properly, so you can't actually save your city. So for each session, you'll have to rebuild the base city again. This combination of no saving and random crashing means that if you wanted to take your time and properly build an actual city up to the 2,000 meter height, it would require you to do it all in one session and would make you still feel somewhat rushed since the random crash can happen at any time, completely ruining whatever city you had. I eventually got the elevator tactic to work, but the process of acquiring that achievement completely soured any enjoyment I had had of the game. Next up is 2017, from which I only played a couple small games. The first of these is Polygoneer, which released on August 24th. In it, you play as a stationary polygonal turret that is being approached on all sides by various shapes. The gameplay is as simple as rotating the turret to shoot the shapes before they reach you. The game has different stages, with the main difference between them being how fast the shapes are moving towards you. The game is short and simple, and I was able to 100% it in under 30 minutes. For around $1, I wasn't expecting much more. Next is Blackout Z Slaughterhouse Edition, which released on October 10th. In Blackout Z, you play as a guy with a gun defending himself against hordes of zombies. There are various pickups around the map to help you do this. You have a limited amount of ammo in your gun, and you are only able to hold up to its maximum capacity at a time. with no extra being stored away for later. This means the only way to reload ammo is through ammo pickups, which fill your gun up to maximum, encouraging constant movement to look for these pickups. To make your life easier, you can unlock guns with higher capacities by clearing a certain number of enemies with the previous tier gun. The main gimmick of the game that I believe the Blackout in the title comes from is that the light source around your character slowly fades over time. As a result of this, if you want to actually be able to see the ammo pickups, you will also need to pick up batteries. You could also need the light to see enemies, but all the enemies I saw had glowing red eyes, which were visible even in the dark. Perhaps even more dangerous than the enemies are the insta-kill saw blade traps scattered around the map, which gives yet another thing you need the light to look out for. This is another fairly short go for the highest score arcade game. In fact, it was actually made by the same person who made Polygoneer, which I didn't realize until researching for this video. Blackout Z was also around $1 and is fairly well polished. The top-down moving and shooting is reminiscent of another game I've played before called Hotline Miami. The twist of having limited visibility is an interesting gimmick. With 2018, we're starting to reach the years that had a lot of games that I played. The first 2018 game that I played was House Flipper, which released on May 17th. House Flipper is a game where you use various different tools to modify houses. These tools are using your hands to move objects, brooms to clean up messes, paint rollers for painting walls, sledgehammers to break walls, plaster to fix walls, a tool to add tiles and panels to walls, and a tool to add entirely new walls. You are also given many different objects to fill these houses with, from tiny plants to entire doors. The game starts by giving you the most basic versions of these tools and a small amount of money. Since this money isn't really enough to fund the purchase and modification of a house yet, you are directed towards a list of jobs that act as both an income source and a tutorial. As you use your tools to complete the jobs, you can upgrade them to increase their capabilities, such as needing less paint per wall or placing down multiple walls at a time. Finally, once you have some money and know how to use your tools, it's time to buy a house, fix it up, and make it look nice. You can then present the house to a collection of NPCs that have their own individual preferences and will offer to buy the house based on those preferences. Based on the feedback you get from each character, you will be able to better serve their needs the next house you work on, and thus the flipping cycle begins. You also have your own house that you can fix and decorate, though I haven't done that very much. There are several DLCs which seem to add more tools, placeable objects, and house locations. However, I don't own any of them and as such can't really speak on them. House Flipper is good if you're looking for a relaxing time. It's one of those games where a task that is laborious in real life becomes enjoyable. Watching the house you're working on change from a ruined mess into an amazing home is a great experience that this game captures very well. Next we have Gravity Wars, which released on July 1st. It is a 4-player game where you play as a triangle with a gravitational pull and the power to force objects away from you. The goal is to avoid getting hit by any projectiles in a last one standing free-for-all. The objects in the game are colored based on which player is nearest to them to indicate which player they are gravitating towards. There are shields that will spawn around the map for players to hide in that deflect objects for a short amount of time. There are a variety of maps with different gimmicks requiring different strategies to outsmart your opponents. The game is fun and simple. It could potentially be improved by allowing online multiplayer rather than just local and versus AI. It could also do with some sound effects because I was very concerned when I opened the game and only heard music. If you're just going for achievements, it took me just under an hour to get 100%. It's also fairly cheap at around $3. Next up is Terra Tech, which released on August 10th. In Terra Tech, you start out controlling a simple land vehicle with short-range weapons. You can utilize these weapons to defeat enemy vehicles and steal their blocks to improve your own vehicle. You can also acquire blocks from buying them at trading posts. But to do that, you need money. One way to get money is completing missions offered by these trading posts. Alternatively, you can engage in the game's resource gathering, crafting, and selling system. You can collect resources by shooting at or drilling through various rocks, trees, and crystals found in the world. You can then either sell these resources directly or bring them to various stationary bases which can either process resources into more valuable materials that sell for more, or turn your resources into new blocks. There are different trade companies in the game that offer different styles of blocks for different purposes. The missions you complete grant you XP with the trade company that offered it, which levels up your trading license with that company, thereby unlocking better blocks for purchase. Eventually you unlock different types of vehicles like planes, helicopters, and hovercrafts, but I have never reached that point in the game. I am not very good at this game, and I'm not too sure why. I have tried to get into it about 3 times now, and each time I reach a point where the difficulty of the randomly encountered enemies just spikes up. There may be some crucial mechanic in the game that I'm missing, but I'm just not sure where to look. I may try this game again in the future, but the Enox Long series that I started in 2023 will definitely not be continuing. Next up is Bad North, which released on August 20th. In Bad North, you control a group of Viking commanders through a series of islands. These islands are attacked by groups of enemies that must be fended off. After successfully defending an island, you receive an amount of money based on how many buildings are still standing. You can then use this money to give the units under a commander different types of weapons with their own abilities. You do have to keep up a decent pace of traveling island to island, since a wall of death is following you. Some islands have rewards attached to them, such as more commanders and items with special effects. There are multiple enemy types that require different strategies to take down. Failing to successfully counter an enemy can easily result in the death of a commander, which permanently removes them from the run. A run ends when you either fail to outrun the wall, run out of commanders, or successfully defend the final island. This game is decent, though it is just that. It does not have some incredible mechanic that has sucked me into it, so I have not really gotten very far in the 5 or so runs that I have done. It does feel very punishing to lose one of your commanders, especially one that you've spent some money on upgrading. So if you're looking for a challenging roguelite, Bad North has you covered. Finally, from 2018, we have Katamari Damacy Reroll, which released on December 7th. Katamari Damacy was a 2004 PlayStation 2 exclusive. In 2018, an HD remaster named Katamari Damacy Reroll was released on PC and Nintendo Switch, before being released on Xbox and PlayStation in late 2020. Since the only changes to the game in the Reroll version were graphical in nature, the plot and gameplay remain the same as the original. In the opening of the game, the King of all Cosmos destroys the moon and all the stars. After finding that a bunch of people were not very happy about this, the king tasks the Prince of all Cosmos, who the player controls, with refilling the sky with stars. The way the prince does this is by going down to Earth and using a ball called a Katamari to roll up increasingly large objects. Levels in the game come in 3 types. First, there are the numbered Make a Star levels. These levels will simply provide the player with a size goal and a time limit. As long as the player reaches the size before the time runs out, the player is successful in the level. Usually, the player will be able to reach the size goal before time runs out. In this case, the game becomes a go for the high score game, where you continue rolling up objects to see how big you can get. Reaching the upper threshold of the size in a level will cause angels to circle your Katamari, and will cause the end of the level to be an ethereal fade out rather than an abrupt cut. The level end screen features the king congratulating you on how well you rolled, and what types of items you rolled. Finally, the Katamari is released into the cosmos to be a star. If you reached the initial goal fast enough, you'll also receive a shooting star commemorating the achievement. Both the normal star and the shooting star will normally be named after what type of object you collected most. The second type of level you'll encounter in the game are called constellation levels. As the name suggests, these levels are based around constellations and will have some gimmick attached to them. These constellations and their related gimmicks are Cancer, where you roll up as many crabs as possible. Cygnus, where you roll up as many swans as possible. Pisces, where you roll up as many fish as you can. Gemini, where you roll up as many twins as possible. Corona Borealis, where you roll up as many crowns as possible. Ursa Major, where you roll up a bear. Taurus, where you roll up a cow. And Virgo, where you roll up as many maidens as you can. The final type of level you'll encounter are levels that don't really fit into the other two categories, of which there are really only two levels that would fit that description. The first is the North Star level, in which you are tasked with rolling a Katamari that is as close to a certain size as possible without having any guiding indicators. The other uncategorizable level is the Credits level. The Credits level places you on Earth with a moon-esque Katamari, and as the credits roll, you are tasked with rolling up as many countries as you can. The star and constellation stages can have presents in them that unlock cosmetics for the prince to wear. After beating the game, these levels can also contain characters similar in appearance to the prince known as cousins. These cousins are found elsewhere in the game as playable characters in the multiplayer versus mode. Rolling up the cousins is not required to play as them in that mode, and only provides a short bio for the cousins in the collection. Oh yeah, there's a collection which keeps track of every item you've rolled up, so if you want to be an insane completionist, you can be. Admittedly, this game holds a special place in my heart as one of the first games I ever played. I'm not sure if it's among the first 5, but it's almost certainly among the first 10. The gameplay is fun, super simple, and easy to pick up. I mean, it's gotta be if 4-year-old me could do it. It has a charming art style that has certainly aged well, and an energetic soundtrack that will keep you rolling. If you do pick it up, I would suggest either doing so on PlayStation or getting it on PC and using a PlayStation controller. This is because in the game there is a dash roll move that is difficult to pull off on controllers that do not have the thumbsticks in parallel. I do have no idea how the PC controls are, so maybe it's fine just doing it on a keyboard, but doing it on the Nintendo Switch controller was not a good experience. That could just be up to personal preference, but regardless of what control scheme you use, this remake is enjoyable. 2019 is another year that I didn't play any games from, so we're going to 2020. And the first one from that is Maneater, released on May 22nd. Maneater is a game where you play as a shark. In the opening moments of the game, the shark you play's mother is hunted and killed by renowned shark hunter Scaly Pete. In an act of revenge, the shark you play as bites Pete's hand off, and quickly swims away. The player then embarks on a quest of rapidly evolving the shark in order to take down Pete for good. Evolutions are gained and improved by spending currency earned through completing missions such as hunting certain aquatic wildlife, destroying certain objects, and eating humans. This game is okay, but it does leave a lot to be desired. Combat can be fun, especially if you get good with timing attacks, stuns, and dodges. Evolutions you unlock are treated as gear that can be equipped to the shark. However, there are not very many of these. In fact, there are only 3 complete sets that can be obtained within the game, which does not give nearly enough variety or customization potential. The game does try to give more customization through the organs, which are not visible on the shark's exterior. The organs are hit or miss, with most of them barely changing gameplay. In fact, 3 of them are just multipliers to how much of one of the game's many currencies you earn. The areas of the map all feel samey, which makes sense since the game mostly takes place underwater, and most visual changes will be completely overshadowed by that. The story is nothing special, it's just there. It is fairly short, I beat it in under 8 hours. There is some DLC available, but the base game was not fun enough for me to want it. In the end, it seems like they tried to make a shark RPG, but mostly ignored what makes an RPG fun. Next up is Shapez, which released on June 7th. Shapez is a factory building game where you are tasked with delivering various shapes to a central hub. Starting out, this is done by simply extracting the shape from a node and sending it to the hub using a conveyor. Eventually, you start unlocking machines that allow you to cut shapes in half, paint the shapes different colors, merge shapes together, and more. By delivering certain shapes to the hub, you can unlock upgrades such as increasing the speed of your conveyors or machines. There's also a shape that you can deliver to the hub that gets stockpiled and can be expended to copy layouts of machines to other locations. I see this game as a more relaxed Factorio, which isn't a bad thing. There aren't bugs trying to constantly kill you, there aren't expendable resource nodes that run out at the worst times, you don't have to work with ultra complex things like trains, drones, and electrical circuitry. Shapes is purely a puzzle solving game where you have to figure out what combination of machines results in the correct output, which I feel makes the game much more approachable compared to other factory games. Next we have Phasmophobia, which released on September 18th. Phasmophobia is a tactical horror game for up to 4 players. In it, you are tasked with entering a haunted location to search for various pieces of paranormal evidence. Using these pieces of evidence and activity you observe, you must identify which of the many ghosts in the game are haunting the location. If successful, you receive a decent amount of money that can be used to purchase better equipment. On the other hand, failing to quickly identify the ghost could result in you overstaying your welcome. In such cases, you must use your equipment to do your best to evade the ghost. Failing to do so will result in your death, meaning the loss of your precious equipment. Should be hunting. When playing this game alone, the atmosphere is fairly ominous. The initial entry of the location where you must locate the ghost is tense. Trying to catch any trace of the mostly invisible entity has you straining your ears, jumping at the slightest sound. Every dark room must be entered and checked for any sign that you are not alone. Once you finally locate its room, then begins the slow process of bringing in all the equipment and testing each one for a sign, all while your sanity is falling. The feeling while you're doing all this, especially as a new player, is completely unsettling. This ominous atmosphere is sadly mostly lost when playing in multiplayer. The silence of being alone is replaced with chatter about strategy. Bumps in the dark can be braved together. The ghost can easily be constantly monitored, its every move watched. And unfortunately, as with all things, being exposed to something over and over again eventually causes it to lessen. I have just over 50 hours in the game, and even in single player it already feels like most runs are just going through the motions. Things like increasing the difficulty or undertaking the weekly challenges do not restore the feeling of fear. Instead, doing these simply makes the game feel like it's unfairly throwing things at you too fast. It can be a fun time to try to investigate a ghost with a friend, but for me the horror aspect is basically completely gone. Lastly, from 2020, we have Noita, which released on October 15th. Noita is a 2D roguelike where you play as a wizard. Throughout the game, you are able to acquire various wands and spells. You must use these to fight through enemies to reach the bottom of a giant cavern. Between sections of the caverns are small shop locations that allow freely swapping spells between wands, purchasing new spells, and acquiring new perks. All of this allowing you to optimize your wands to have a better chance of success. I really enjoy this game, but I'm also very bad at it. The wand customization mechanic has the potential to create extremely powerful weapons, but I have never been fortunate enough or smart enough to create such a wand. As with Terraria, The Binding of Isaac, and other 2D bullet hells that I have played in the past, I just can't seem to avoid getting hit by the most ridiculous things. If I spent another 10 to 50 hours playing it, I'm sure I'd improve. But for right now, it's a good game that I suck at, and I don't feel qualified to say much more. Next is 2021, which will be our last small year. And the first game I'll be covering is one that's actually appeared in this series before. That game is Hitman 3, which released on January 20th. This is the final game in the Hitman World of Assassination trilogy. For a brief explanation of the World of Assassination games, they basically give you these large open missions in which you are tasked with eliminating a target. You are typically given many different ways of doing this, including setting up objects in the world to create accidents, sneaking poison into the target's drink, or a good old-fashioned old-fashioned headshot. To make your job easier, you are able to take outfits from people around the map that will allow you to access different areas or perform certain tasks without arousing suspicion. Hitman 3 is the perfected formula of the World of Assassination trilogy. Just like with previous entries, Hitman 3 heavily encourages exploration and experimentation to creatively deal with targets. Hitman 3 introduces 6 new maps to the trilogy. Its maps, in my opinion, are the best of the trilogy and offer the most unique sets of objectives. The methods of elimination maintain the interestingness and creativity of the rest of the trilogy. Story-wise, the game is a decent conclusion to the trilogy, though I can't elaborate because spoilers. The story cutscenes are a definite step up from the mostly static images used in Hitman 2. The mission intro cinematics are where they really cooked. I'm just going to play portions of mission intros from the 3 games here, and you can tell me which one you think is best.
Unscrupulous and opportunistic, Iago has caused disastrous security leaks all over the globe. When Crimean separatists caused a deadly meltdown at the Odessa nuclear power plant, Iago gave them access to the plant's security network. And when the Delgado drug cartel shot down the plane of President Hernandez and his family, Iago provided the classified flight plans. Kronstadt enjoys enormous popularity with global consumers. However, few are aware that the company is also one of the world's leading suppliers of next-gen military tech. Last year, despotic ruler Jin Po employed prototype Kronstadt drones against peaceful civilian protesters in the now infamous Tunyan Valley incident. And although it has yet to be proven, there is little doubt that the Noxes personally brokered the deal, making them complicit in a war crime. Carlisle descends from an ancient line of warrior aristocrats. Her great-grandfather made a killing in the Second Opium War and established an empire in shipping, railroads, and newspaper publishing. While largely unknown to the public, the family still asserts its quiet dominance over global transport and logistics, media, and technology. Most senior of the partners, Alexa Carlisle, is cold as ice, tough as nails, and sharp as a razor.
I think it's clear that they definitely got better at making these as time went on. You are able to carry progress from Hitman 2 over to Hitman 3, and are able to play all maps and missions of the World of Assassination trilogy in the Hitman 3 engine. If you are able to interpret this visual guide by Reddit user Terzibiat and purchase the game correctly, this game is well worth it. Next up, we have a game that's very difficult to talk about without getting into spoilers, but I'm still going to try. That game is Inscryption, which released on October 19th. Inscryption is a game where you definitely are just playing a roguelike card game in a cabin in the woods the whole time. And definitely nothing at all interesting or fourth wall breaking happens. There is no secret creepy lore at all. All jokes aside, I really enjoyed this game all the way through. It is a card game pretty much the whole way through, though occasionally the rules will change slightly. The story was enjoyable and keeps you wondering what crazy thing is going to happen next. After looking up some stuff after completing the game, it does seem some of the story is tied to the developer's previous games. I haven't played any of them, but you probably should if you're coming for the lore, and I suppose me playing Inscryption has given me an incentive to go back to those games, just to maybe get a little more out of Inscryption. Next up is the biggest year so far, 2022. And the first game we have here is Rogue Tower, which released on January 28th. Rogue Tower is a roguelite tower defense game. In it, you are in control of a central tower that can have varying amounts of paths leading to it based on the difficulty that you choose. The player must place defensive towers down around the paths in order to stop enemies that will come out of the ends of them intent on reaching the main tower. After each wave of enemies, you are able to extend that path further away from your tower. Doing so will add a random tile that can have terrain of varying heights, certain natural features such as mana crystals and iron veins, and a path going through it with the possibility of creating a branch. Every few waves, or every wave with the right upgrades, the player is given the choice between a few cards. These cards can give the player a new tower type, a new supporting building, or increase the capabilities of already owned towers. Enemies can have up to 3 separate health bars that are weak to different types of attacks. These are a normal health bar, which is usually weak to towers with sharp projectiles and bleeding, an armor bar that is usually weak to towers with explosive projectiles and fire, and a shield bar that is usually weak to towers with magic attacks and poison. There are a few significant boss waves that will spawn an enemy with the capability of instantly reducing the tower to 0 health. After the defeat of a boss, a new section will be started that will add new possible natural features to the tiles the player extends to, such as graves or shrines. Eventually, every run will end, granting the player with some amount of XP, which can be spent on permanent upgrades and new towers. This is a pretty decent tower defense game. There is a good amount of variety in the tower types. Strategizing placement of them is a fun challenge, especially when you have to take into consideration the weaknesses that you have to target. There are really only 3 problems that I have with the game. First, there are no time controls. The game could really use a speed up button, especially when taking into consideration that runs are supposed to last around 40 or more waves. The length of runs also plays into another part of the game that I have an issue with. The game does not allow for saving mid-run and returning to it at a later date, meaning if you're only limited to playing this game for around an hour, you probably won't be able to finish a run. And my third issue with the game is that you are not able to respec the upgrades that you choose. So if you just want to test out a tower to see how it works, you can't refund that to get something different if you decide that tower isn't good for you. Aside from those issues, the game is fun. Next up is a game I talked a little about last year, but have played some more this year and have more to talk about. That game is Pokemon Legends Arceus, which released on January 28th. Pokemon Legends Arceus introduces new mechanics to the Pokemon formula that make the game feel interesting. Similar to many of the modern 3D Pokemon games, Pokemon can actually be seen physically in the world. However, instead of instantly triggering a battle upon touching them, you are able to directly interact with them. This allows some wild Pokemon to be caught by sneaking up on them. Alternatively, you can toss food or some other items to act as a distraction while you catch them. Some more aggressive Pokemon can be stunned to make catching them easier, or if the player wants, the classic battle and catch method still works as well. Each Pokemon has a set of research tasks associated with it that challenge you to do things, such as catching a certain amount of them, using certain items on them, or seeing them use certain moves. Completing these tasks will give you more information on the Pokemon's Pokédex page, such as what foods they will be more likely to be distracted by. Changes have also been made to the battle system. As you play, your Pokemon can start to master their moves, allowing them to perform them in strong or agile style. Along with these changes comes a turn order system. In older Pokemon games, the Pokemon would take their turns simultaneously, with the one with the higher speed using its action first. In Legends Arceus, this is replaced with the turn order system, which is affected by the strong and agile moves. Agile will cause your next turn to come sooner at the cost of attack damage, while strong will cause your attack to be stronger, but your next turn to be further away. With this system, it's possible for a Pokemon to end up taking 2 turns between the opposing one's turns. The game also adds crafting mechanics that require you to gather materials out in the world, allowing you to get items like Pokeballs and potions without having to buy them. In 2023, I first experienced Legends Arceus's Noble Pokemon battle system. In these battles, you, the player, engage in combat against a large enraged Pokemon by throwing bombs at it to calm it down. You can also dodge its attacks in an attempt to get it to stun itself. Once stunned, you can send your Pokemon after it to weaken it. After it has been weakened, you go back to the Noble battle where bombs will have an increased effect. Last year I briefly discussed this game, and my praise of it being a fresh take on the gameplay of Pokemon, with its open world catching mechanics and its strong agile system for battling, still holds true. The Noble battle system is also an interesting new mechanic, getting the trainer directly involved in battling Pokemon. After a competing monster battling game came out in early 2024, it does make me a little disappointed that the developers of Pokemon did not put more effort in with the crafting system or with the graphics, since this game would have been the most suited for experimenting with those things. Next up is a game that I've mentioned a couple times in this series, but have finally gotten around to playing, and that is LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, which released on April 5th. This is the latest revision of the LEGO Star Wars games that covers all 9 main movies, as well as DLC for the spin-off movies and shows. I will be evaluating this only against the complete saga, since that is the only other LEGO Star Wars game I've played. LEGO Skywalker Saga has an open world that you travel through to get to different story levels. Combat is significantly different from previous games in that you don't simply press one button to attack, but have many different types of attacks that you can combo. The most obvious thing is the large graphical leap, and Skywalker Saga looks amazing. The changes to combat make engaging in it more fun. Cutscenes are now fully voice acted, though I believe if you prefer the older method of just mumbles and groans, you can switch to that. The LEGO brand of comedy is still present, and the puzzles are still fun to solve. The levels somehow feel larger and smaller at the same time, but that doesn't take too much away from the game. Overall, I enjoy what little I have played of this game. Next up is Dorfromantik, which released on April 28th. Dorfromantik is a chill world building game. The player is given various hex tiles to place down to create towns, bodies of water, and other features. Players can maximize their score by ensuring that all sides of a tile are correctly matched with another tile. The player also receives new tiles by completing quests, such as connecting certain amounts of tiles or having connected tiles have a certain amount of a feature, such as a forest with 300 trees. A run ends when the player runs out of tiles. This game is nice to look at with its charming art style. Strategizing each tile placement is an enjoyable puzzle. It's super satisfying to watch the world come together, especially when you are able to chain together matching edges. Next is PlateUp, which released on August 4th. PlateUp is a roguelite restaurant management game. In it, you are first tasked with preparing a simple dish and delivering it to customers. Doing so provides you with money, which allows you to purchase better equipment, such as sinks that wash dishes automatically and stoves that don't burn food. Eventually, after a few days pass, you will receive the choice between 2 cards. These cards are almost always negative, adding some level of complexity to your restaurant, such as by adding a side dish or making your customers take longer to eat. Eventually, you're able to buy decorations that ease your suffering in some way, build conveyors to automate parts of your restaurant, and research advanced equipment that makes some tasks trivial. If you manage to overcome everything the game throws at you and reach day 15, you are able to turn your restaurant into a franchise with a special golden card that will make your next run easier. From the games I've played that were released in 2022, this is almost certainly the best indie multiplayer game of that year. The slow ramp up of difficulty keeps the game engaging. Successfully finding a way to automate some process in the restaurant is always satisfying. There is significant variety between runs thanks to the different cards, restaurant layouts, holiday modifiers, and food items. I will say that at absolute minimum, this is a 2-player game. The game is very difficult when playing solo since you have to manage every aspect of the restaurant. I have found that it works better when you have at least 2 people, with one running the kitchen and one waiting tables, and then splitting other tasks like cleaning between the 2. And I'm sure adding more people would allow even further specialization. The game does seem to have various modifiers based on how many players you have, but I would say that the positives from moving from 1 to 2 players greatly outweighs any negative modifiers. This game is definitely a good time with friends. Next we have Isle of Arrows, which released on August 8th. Isle of Arrows is another roguelite tower defense game. In it, for each run you are able to choose a guild to be a part of that will change gameplay slightly. The simplest and first guild that you unlock gives health every 10 waves. Reaching high waves as a guild will unlock the next guild with its own modifications to gameplay. Once in game, the player is presented with a grid-based map. On this map will be a short path leading to a yellow crystal, and a simple tower adjacent to it. Before each wave, the player is presented with a card that can be placed adjacent to existing structures. This card may be a tower to increase damage, a path to make the path longer, a trap that slows or damages enemies, or a supporting card with some other effect. The player can also choose to move on to the card that would be drawn next wave for a small amount of gold. Occasionally you can get bridges that allow you to build over the edge of the map, and bombs that let you replace a tile. After clearing each wave, the player will receive some gold, the income of which can be increased by stockpiling gold. After clearing some amount of waves, a second crystal will spawn that must also be defended. Unlike Rogue Tower, this game is extremely easy to mess up in. Bad RNG with what cards you get, or bad card placement can easily ruin a run. When playing, I rarely felt like my towers were capable of doing enough damage to halt the attackers effectively. This issue is potentially user error by not utilizing my space correctly, so I may just need to spend more time playing to figure out the proper strategies. Next is Potion Craft, which released on December 13th. Potion Craft is a game where you create and sell various potions. Customers will come to your shop and explain a problem that they have, and you must create a potion to solve it. You do this by mixing various ingredients together to traverse a map to reach the potion you want to make. Different ingredients have different movement types. For instance, earthy ingredients generally move the potion down on the map, while airy ingredients move the potion up. Optionally, you can grind the ingredients to cause them to move further in their related direction. If you are able to get your recipe to land closer to the center of the potion's icon on the map, you will make a higher grade of potion that customers will pay more for. If you think you've found the optimal way to make a potion, then you can save the recipe to be able to immediately make it again when you need it without having to traverse the map. To get more ingredients, you have a garden that replenishes every day, and merchants that will occasionally pass by. There is a reputation mechanic in the game that ranges from good to evil and will change based on which customers you provide potions to. You can usually identify how your reputation will change by reading the request each customer gives. For instance, a customer that asks for a potion to burn their enemy's house down will likely result in reputation going towards evil, while a customer that asks for a potion to keep themselves warm would probably result in reputation going towards good. The game also has a popularity system, which goes up by selling potions to customers, but goes down if you reject customers. You can spend some popularity points to haggle for better sell prices to customers, or you can save popularity points to gain popularity levels that give better base prices for potions, better deals from merchants, more daily customers, and other bonuses. The game is divided into chapters, which it calls the Alchemist's Path. In it, you receive tasks to craft different kinds of potions, reach certain popularity levels, and work on a legendary alchemy machine. The game is relaxing in the beginning, but unfortunately it quickly becomes tedious to try and find the correct combination of ingredients to get to different potions. It also at some point starts making you craft combination potions, which often involve backtracking through the map to get the required effects. This issue that I have with spending time traversing the map is an unavoidable and intentional game mechanic, so this game isn't really my cup of tea. Finally, from 2022, we have Stacklands, specifically the Order and Structure update, which released on December 14th. In last year's video, I discussed the base game for Stacklands. Since then, they have released a few free updates. These updates have added new cards and new locations to the game. So let's talk about them. First, to recap what Stacklands is. Stacklands is a card-based resource management game where you create a village. You do this by opening various card packs that contain different resources. You then use your villagers to exploit these resources to make them more valuable in some way. This can be done in the literal way, where turning a piece of wood into a stick doubles its monetary value. Or it can be done in a figurative way, where combining 3 stone and 1 wood can make you a quarry, a building that can act as an unlimited supply of stone. You'll need to sell some resources eventually in order to get higher tiers of packs, which will give better ways of acquiring resources. You'll also need to grow the amount of villagers you have and ensure that they are fed and won't starve. In the base game of Stacklands, the cycle of exploiting resources and improving the village repeats until you eventually construct a temple and summon a demon boss. After defeating the boss, the first free update to Stacklands, the island, begins. To get to the island, you must build a boat, which can only hold 1 villager. The island is an entirely new board with its own card packs. Eventually, using resources you get on the island, you are able to make a better boat that can carry multiple cards, including villagers and resources. By using this boat, you are able to bring resources back to your mainland and craft an item that lets you defeat another demon boss. After this, all that's left is the Dark Forest. The Dark Forest update significantly changed the combat and equipment system of the game. Previously, there had only been two types of villager, a basic villager and a swordsman. After turning a villager into a swordsman, you could not change it back. After the Dark Forest update, every villager has 3 equipment slots that can be filled and unfilled with equipment at will. It also adds a rock, paper, scissors-esque combat system with many new melee, ranged, and magic weapons. Using this system to your advantage is crucial for the new map, the Dark Forest. The Dark Forest is home to waves of enemies to defeat, before a 9th wave with a Wicked Witch boss. Finally, the Order and Structure update added several new buildable cards that the developers say have the goal of making the mid and late game more manageable. 2 notable ones that I found helpful were the Resource Chest, which can store 30 cards of a single resource, and the Hot Pot, which can store a food value up to 50, which feeds 25 villagers. There were also other cards added that give the possibility of some automation, but these cards that reduce the board clutter were super valuable to me. You should try to acquire the cards from the update as soon as you can to make the rest of the game easier. I experienced both the island and the Dark Forest after Order and Structure had released. The 3 major updates to the game since its release have made Stacklands significantly more complex. You can easily see this from my base game playthrough being only 5 hours, while my Order and Structure playthrough is over 13 hours. I definitely think the most significant contribution to this is the island. Having to start an entire second board and manage resources between the 2 boards extends the game time significantly, and I think this is a great thing. Free content that increases the value of a game and extends the amount of time I'm going to be playing it is an extremely rare thing these days. More mainstream games are asking $40 plus for content that barely affects gameplay. Currently, Stacklands is a good game with great value. And now, it's time for the real focus of this video, 2023. And the first release of 2023 that I experienced is Papa's Freezeria Deluxe, which released on March 31st. Papa's Freezeria was a 2011 Flash game in the Papa series of restaurant management games. In each of the Papa games, you take orders from customers and then make the food that they order. In Freezeria, the food item that you make are sundaes, which must be mixed together with the correct ingredients, blended for the right amount of time, and given the requested toppings. Based on how well you carry out these processes, you will receive a score and a tip amount. The last customer of each day is referred to as a closer, and they are supposedly more harsh when scoring your sundae. After an in-game week, you receive an amount of money based on your rank, which increases as you get more points. You can use this money and the money from your tips to buy upgrades for your machines to make your job easier. In 2023, a deluxe version of Papa's Freezeria was released on Steam. The deluxe version adds many features to the game that were introduced in Papa games released after the original, and makes it playable without having Flash, which was discontinued for security reasons in 2020. Features introduced that are new to Papa's Freezeria in the Deluxe Edition are the ability to create a custom character rather than using a preset, mini-games between each day, furniture and clothing used for customizing the restaurant and the player character, daily specials that give a point multiplier, a delivery order option where you answer a phone and send out a delivery driver, a dining room where customers will eat in rather than to go, a food truck for making any sundae you want, a book allowing you to review all customers and their orders, and a parade in which characters you have met will walk past. Before I played real PC games, I was mostly a Nintendo and Flash game player. From that era of my life, Papa's Freezeria was one of my go-tos. I distinctly remember playing the game several times. There were times when me and some of my family members would all be in the same room on different computers playing these games, seeing who could go the fastest or who could get the most points. For all the childhood memories and all the new features, buying this game was a no-brainer. The relaxing gameplay of fulfilling orders still holds up, so I would recommend this game to anyone who enjoyed the original. We have Crusader Kings 3 Tours and Tournaments, which released on May 11th. Tours and Tournaments was the major expansion for Crusader Kings 3 in 2023. Alongside it came a free update that changes many events in the game to, instead of happening instantly, characters must now physically travel to them. This traveling is visibly seen on the map. When planning to travel, you are able to customize your route in an attempt to either avoid certain dangers or to visit certain locations on the map. Passing through notable locations such as other rulers' capitals, notable landmarks, and holy sites will grant some type of resource, be it lifestyle experience, prestige, or piety. Also included for free was a regencies feature, allowing a character to serve as ruler while the actual ruler is traveling, underage, or is incapable of ruling in some other way. This regent is able to attempt to seize more power for themselves the longer they are regent, potentially even staging a coup against the actual ruler. The Tours and Tournaments expansion specifically introduced 3 large-scale events to the game. First are Grand Tours, in which a high-level ruler takes a tour of their domain, visiting vassals, increasing opinion, and gaining prestige. The second event added was Grand Tournaments, which invite knights from all over the world to compete in various events, from jousting to board games, for equipment prizes that give considerable benefits. Finally, the Grand Wedding was added, which gives a significant boost to the acceptance for wedding proposals. Tours and Tournaments lets you attend events with specific intentions, such as murdering, seducing, or engaging in diplomacy. I think this was a decent enough expansion. It certainly added more interesting and engaging content than Royal Court did, since I think a decent amount of effort put into that expansion was put into the equipment system. While there are better things to put money towards in the early game, the grand activities do have substantial benefits. I remember at launch, the grand tournament prizes were super powerful, but I'm not sure if that has been changed since then. The AI also seems to host events fairly frequently, and you can still get significant benefits from just attending the events. Next is We Love Katamari Reroll plus Royal Reverie, which released on June 2nd. We Love Katamari was the 2005 sequel to Katamari Damacy, and was also a PlayStation 2 exclusive. In 2023, as with Katamari Damacy, an HD remaster named We Love Katamari Reroll was released on all modern platforms. However, unlike Katamari Damacy Reroll, the changes in We Love Katamari Reroll are slightly more significant. This is mostly due to the additional content included in the game, brought by Royal Reverie. Since the only changes to the base game were graphical in nature, the plot and gameplay remains the same as the original. In a truly meta move, We Love Katamari centers around how the success of the first game resulted in a bunch of fans of Katamari. Now, the prince is tasked with answering these fans' requests. Yet again, the way the prince does this is by going down to Earth and using a Katamari to roll up objects. There are 5 normal stages which give a time limit and a size to reach. These 5 stages have a slight variant where the goal is instead to reach a certain size as fast as possible. In We Love Katamari, the gimmick stages are much more varied than the first game. The gimmick stages are as follows. A boy who can't swim asks for an underwater Katamari. A teacher of flower arrangement requests a bunch of flowers to be rolled up. A mother asks for her son's room to be cleaned up. A dog asks you to roll up the sun. A teacher asks you to calm down her students. A lonely animal wants friends. A sumo wrestler wants to grow big for his fight. A student wants to collect paper cranes to give to a sick friend. A couple of twins want to eat some sweets. A camper wants a campfire. A race car driver wants a fast Katamari. A man wants money to be raised to save the red pandas. A student needs light to study. A girl wants to build a snowman. A farmer wants a cow or a bear, but ideally a cow bear. A baby wants a Katamari that is as big as possible, but only contains 50 items. A student wanting to go on a field trip wants the rain clouds rolled up. And a hula hooping girl wants a Katamari of a certain size, but you don't know how close you are to that size. In most stages, you are able to find presents containing cosmetic items, just as in Katamari Damacy. Unlike in Katamari Damacy, in your first run through the game, you are also able to find cousins that can be rolled up and unlocked as playable characters, no longer restricted to the multiplayer mode. Some cosmetic items from presents will change in appearance based on which cousin is wearing them. As you complete levels, occasionally you'll unlock cutscenes revealing the king's childhood backstory. These cutscenes were present in the original, but are somewhat related to the extra content introduced with Royal Reverie. I'm not sure about the specifics of unlocking Royal Reverie stages, but I do know that I unlocked the first one after the third cutscene. Royal Reverie presents the player with 5 stages in which you play as the young king of the cosmos. The 5 stages correspond with the 5 tasks the old king has the young king perform in the first cutscene. These tasks are studying for school, learning ballet, pulling a tire on the beach, boxing training with a punching bag, and learning to play piano. The stages for Royal Reverie are cleaning up the young king's bedroom before studying, collecting ballerinas at the zoo, running around and collecting wheels, boxing training in the mountain, and collecting instruments from a haunted school at night. The final notable feature added in this remake is the presence of stickers throughout many levels. At some point in the game, you unlock a functional camera cosmetic. Using this camera to take pictures of enough stickers will unlock a new filter for the camera. So far, in my 2 playthroughs of We Love Katamari Reroll, I have not engaged with this feature, so I have no idea if the filters are any good. The original We Love Katamari was great. I remember playing it much more than Katamari Damacy. This modern graphical update is faithful to the original. Unfortunately, the additional Royal Reverie content feels half-baked. The stages are short and feel rushed. If it had not been included, I probably would have nothing negative to say about the game. If I had to guess, it was just added to combat people being like, why would I buy this? I can just emulate the original. But if that was their goal, then I have no idea why it seems like they put no effort into the Royal Reverie content. Aside from Royal Reverie being disappointing, everything positive I said about Katamari Damacy Reroll easily applies to this game. The gameplay is fun and simple, the game has a good art style, basically everything about it holds up today. And that's it. Those were my thoughts about most of the games that I played in 2023. There are some notable ones that I left out since getting footage for them was going to be an ordeal. Those would be World of Warcraft, Fortnite, and Overwatch 2, all 3 of which are games that are constantly being updated and changed, so I cut them at the last minute. Now, I think it's pretty obvious that this is being posted halfway through 2024, instead of right after 2023 ended. This video took me a long time to get around to editing. I procrastinated way too much, and that is why I have decided that this video will be the last one that I will do in this format. It takes me way too long to get them out, so I think my time would be better spent pivoting into something that I think is more doable. So, any future game reviews on this channel will be videos dedicated to individual video games rather than massive projects talking about multiple games. I believe I mentioned wanting to try this in last year's video, but never got around to doing it. I can't really guarantee that there will be any more videos on this channel since I really don't know where my life is headed at this point. But if life permits and the right game comes along, then I'll try my best. I referenced a few wiki pages and guides while making this video, so I'll leave links to all the ones that I remember in the description. Most of the clips I used in this video come from another channel I have called Anox Longs, where I upload long no commentary gameplay videos. I intend to keep putting stuff up on that channel and potentially even kicking it up a notch now that this video is out. Some other footage came from my semi-abandoned Anoxmally channel, though I did put up a Phasmophobia video in February, I think. All music should be listed in the description as well. I didn't really feel like doing the thing where I put them on screen like I did last year. And yeah, I think that's everything. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you want to see more like this but shorter, and as always, I will hopefully see you next time.